Hello, welcome to World Talks. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. The new START nuclear arms control treaty between the United States and Russia has officially expired, removing decades-old limits on their strategic nuclear arsenals and prompting concern from governments and the United Nations alike. U.S. President Donald Trump, in a Truth Social post on Thursday, has urged that, quote, our nuclear experts work on a new, improved and modernized treaty that can last long into the future, unquote. At the same time, Washington is engaged in high-stakes nuclear talks with Iran and Oman, raising fresh questions about how that standoff will also continue or be resolved. With us to discuss the latest is Tomáš A. Nagy, Senior Research Fellow for Nuclear, Space and Missile Defense at GLOBSEC. Good to have you on the program. Now, I want to jump right into the issue with Oman right away. I mean, we have on the one end caps ending with the START treaty. We're not sure how that's going to be renewed, but we want caps, or the United States wants caps, on Iran's nuclear program. So how is this going to affect negotiations, and how will that play out?
Well, there's one substantial difference between those two examples, and first and foremost, Russia is a recognized nuclear power. So the U.S. objective is to manage that relationship, not to disarm Russia. With Iran, the situation is significantly different because Iran is not recognized as a country that should have, according to the international law, or what has been said actually by the Iranian government previously, to have nuclear weapons itself. So for that, that fits into the kind of nuclear non-proliferation policy. So they have one commonality, that they are relevant to nuclear weapons, but these are two very different set of relationships. And the reasons, why the New START treaty has expired hasn't had that much to do with the proliferation in the Middle East. So I don't think that there is a significant level of connection that you would have in Washington in relation to these two issues. These are really, really separate issues, and even different people working on those two kinds of portfolios here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then let's narrow and focus then on just the Oman negotiations. Just generally, we've had a recent buildup of United States Armada, more forces there, threatening words from both sides if any of this escalates. Now these negotiations, tell us a bit of your sense of how successful these will be, and what does success look like at the end of the day?
Well, at the end of the day, I think ultimately the success look like that there will be a gesture from the Iranian government that will kind of ensure Western countries, first and foremost the United States of America and its regional allies, that Iran is not ready to commit step that would call into question its long-term stance not to develop nuclear weapons. Because we have seen technical developments in Iran that call into question this kind of commitment. And at the same time, we have also a pretty rapid growth of the Iranian ballistic missile program. And if you look at these two things in kind of conjunction, that Iran is more and more capable when it comes to nuclear technology. At the same time, it's also progressing pretty well with the ballistic missile technology. In some sense, this story looks very similar to what we have seen 2 decades ago with regards to North Korea, which is, a sign of warning for the U.S. administration that if there is a potential proliferator, you need to deal with this challenge before it actually manages to proliferate, and not after. Because after, I think the example of North Korea really shows that even if you have military superiority, economic superiority, diplomatic superiority, you don't really have a walkable avenue to disarm that country or to kind of negotiate a position that is very much favorable to you. So the United States of America now is trying to exert as much of diplomatic pressure as possible. We have seen last year that there was even an application of military force against Iran. I don't believe that the U.S. would want to have a full-fledged war with Iran, but it's really seeking ways how to exercise even coercive diplomacy to its maximum extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned coercion there at the same time, but at the same time we're seeing now these two sides come together, if they do come together. There was also an initial, I'm just curious, suggestion that these talks would actually happen in Turkey. They've now changed to Oman. How do we read into that? Is that significant here at all?
Well, I think Oman is really seen as a potentially a more neutral ground, so it does have a symbolism, but what's really important is the content. of the negotiation. And that's pretty much defined by the two parties, not necessarily the place where it happens. So I wouldn't really pay an extra attention to where it's happening. It's much more important how these negotiations evolve and what will be the steps of the U.S. administration after this round of talks with Iran.
Okay, and we've also already seen the market reaction. Oil is down already 2% as these talks were actually announced. So does that give us any indication? Is this crisis now easing? Is it over? Or is this just a monetary blip?
I think it's certainly on short-term signals that de-escalation is, or at least stability is more likely than escalation. But I would be pretty cautious to draw long-term conclusions just simply based on the events of the past hours or days. This is really a tough issue to resolve, diplomatically speaking. There is a history of relations between the United States of America and Iran that is not really making these negotiations easy. So I don't think we are kind of nearing the end point that would resolve this issue once and for all. But obviously, for us to get to that end point, we need to see kind of a string of positive signs. And the developments of the last hours and days seem to be rather positive, and that's the good news. And that's how I read market reaction to it.
All right, thanks for that. And also, I want to jump back to President Trump's Truth Social comment, which came on Thursday, just as the START treaty has expired. And he goes on in his typical fashion, but then some of the words here that he wants, I'm quoting here, a new, improved, and modernized treaty. So he doesn't say START specifically. So how do we interpret his words there? How long would this kind of negotiation potentially take? What would that look like? What's the statement tell us?
Yeah, this is not really inconsistent with what President Trump has actually said. We have seen this kind of remarks even during the first Trump administration. There was a big deal of skepticism towards the New START treaty because he sees it as a way, a treaty negotiated in a way that is unfavorable to the U.S. He has been pretty consistent over this, at least for a decade. It's certainly a good sign that there is a will on, as it seems on both sides, to continue discussion, strategic dialogue, and something might come out of it with regards to nuclear weapons. But I think, for anyone to expect that we will have something as complex and ambitious that the New START treaty was, also, in terms of verification and data exchanges and notifications, that seems to me, pretty unlikely. Also because the world of nuclear weapons is increasingly shaped by third parties, first and foremost by China, but we also see relevant developments in North Korea and other places. So it's objectively much, much more difficult to do arms controls of this kind. I think it would be the benefit of the global community to have a structured dialogue between the U.S. and Russia on nuclear stability. And if there is this kind of declaration coming out of it, that countries will not build new nuclear weapons, they will not do significant uploading, they will fight against the proliferation of nuclear weapons, that will be a positive sign. But I think the chances that we would have a massive and a very complex nuclear agreement of this kind doesn't seem to be very likely in the near future. First and foremost, because China doesn't seem to be interested on embarking these kind of arms control deals with the U.S. And Russia, because that would put constraints on the development of Chinese nuclear arsenal, and China seems to be much more favoring a nuclear buildup before it starts to engage on really meaningful and complex dialogue with the U.S. and Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just in conclusion, one quick fast sentence about all of that. Where are we in a year's time on nuclear, or rather non-nuclear proliferation or proliferation, all this globally?
Well, the good news is that for a number of years we did not see any country spiraling out, and that's a positive sign. But we are in a pretty fragile world, and even U.S. allies have started to talk about the future of nuclear deterrence. We don't need to go that far. I mean, even in Europe, we have seen last year a kind of resurgence of debates about the future of European nuclear deterrent, or whether how European countries can contribute to that more forcefully. And that is to some extent related to the way how President Trump manages its relationship with the allies, and extended nuclear deterrent is part of that allied relationship. And especially, if we will see an increase with deployed nuclear weapons on the side of Russia, that will have a clearly negatively impact on European security, and European countries would need to react to that. We are doing just fine as of now, but it shouldn't really mistaken us. The world that we are entering into, that might be defined by the nuclear arms race, by the weakening of allied relationship in the Western world, might, plausibly create impetus for even something that we call friendly proliferation.
Okay.
This is certainly not look like a stable world to me.
All right. Thank you so much for all. As you said, where there's a will, there may be a way. Thanks so much for all those interesting insights. That was our guest here, Tomáš A. Thank you so much from GLOBSEC. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.